Vlad, we are ready to start.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, EdTech in Vietnam, Evolution or Revolution. It's my pleasure to have a panel of distinguished guests today, 4 of them, and we'll be sharing a lot of interesting insights on the current situation of EdTech in Vietnam and its future. And let's see where the discussion goes. My name is Vlad Savin. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Central and Eastern European Chamber here in Vietnam. And together with the co-host partners and with the distinguished speakers, we prepared interesting discussion for you to better understand what's happening in the sector in Vietnam currently, what are challenges, opportunities, and learn from their practical experiences on how they create value for their stakeholders, for their communities as well. So before we start, I'd like to wait for a couple of minutes for the attendees to log in. We had over 100 registrations, so we're going to wait a bit for them to log in. And in the meantime, Monica, if you can share on the next slide, we'll go through a bit of technicalities of Zoom, which we're all familiar with already. I'll start with the Q&A. We're going to have a separate Q&A session at the end. And in the meantime, anytime you have any questions for the panelists, for myself, just use the Q&A button, write down your question there. We'll try to answer all of them by the end of the discussion. You can use the chat function as well to reach out to us, and you can also raise your hand, and maybe we'll turn on your microphone and you can directly interact with the speakers, with the panelists. It's pretty straightforward. We've been there many times for the last 2 years, so I think it's pretty clear on this side for everyone. Monica, let's go on the next slide with a very quick introduction on who the panelists will be for today's session. Until the slide is on, I'll start with a quick introduction. So we have Tram Anh Nguyen. She's the co-founder of cftc, Center for Finance, Technology, and Entrepreneurship. She's also author of a Fintech book that has just been launched. Maybe she's going to share with us a couple of insights about that. I'll let her and the other speakers introduce more about themselves and the company. For now, I'll just share a few words on who they are. We have Michael No. He's the co-founder of Elsa Speak. It's one of the famous EdTech ventures here in Vietnam. We have Matthew Lowry from a client Vietnam, a corporate services firm focused on supporting international investors in the Vietnamese market here. And as well, we have Train from Passerelles Numérique. It's an NGO that is focused on supporting underprivileged students with IT training, IT support, and vocational training.
Right.
All right, let's wait 1 more minute, and I think we can proceed with the webinar and with the interesting topics. For your information, the webinar will be recorded. We're going to share it across with all the participants. And you probably see as well, we're live on Facebook currently, and you can share potentially the Facebook link with anyone that you think might be interested to watch us there. Thanks, Monica, for arranging the Facebook link so fast. Okay, before we start, I'd like to quickly share a few thoughts on why we chose to discuss about EdTech, and then I'll let the speakers create their introductions. EdTech in Vietnam has been, for the last 2 years, one of the sectors, one of the market verticals that had a significant growth experience due to many reasons, also related to regulations from the authorities and support from the government side, as well because of the situation of the pandemic and various other reasons. The market has considerably grew for the last few years, almost 50% growth of the market since 2019. There's a lot of interest from international investors to access the market and understand potential opportunities here. And there's a lot of opportunities from local players, local Vietnamese startups that can engage within the system and they can create value for their communities here in Vietnam. So for me, it's a very interesting discussion, and I hope you'll get the value that you expect from the panelists today. They have a lot of practical experience, and it will be really interesting to hear their thoughts on the current status of education technology and its future. So without further ado, I'd like to start our session now with asking the panelists to share a few thoughts about themselves, their business, and why they chose to be part of this very interesting and exciting sector, EdTech. Maybe Tram, you can start first, and then we'll continue with the rest.
Yes, no, thanks a lot. First, before I start, I would like to thank, for inviting me and for doing this great event. And it's a pleasure to being here with you. So I'm Chen Nguyen, and I'm the co-founder of CFT, we're the Center for Finance, Technology, and Entrepreneurship. I'm also a co-author of the Fintech Job Report, which I'll be very happy to share the findings. What is CFT? CFT is a global platform for education in Fintech and the future of financial services. And the idea behind CFT is very much helping institutions, organizations, but also a lot of people at the same time from everywhere around the world to adapt to a world of tech-driven finance by offering financial education, scholarships, and mentoring individuals in the fintech industry. And we believe that the mission of educating people in fintech is really important. And the objective of what we are doing and our mission is very much today to equip professionals and students with the right skills to thrive in this new financial world, open opportunities to many people from totally different walks of life, background, to upskill, reskill, and perhaps help them to find jobs in fintech and the world of finance. And that's the goal why we set it up CFT. So really passionate about EdTech and how education can really help today, not only learning, but try to bring that huge community together so that they can find opportunities for themselves. So what we are doing and how we do that, so we spend a lot of time, so I spend a lot of time working and collaborating with governments, policymakers, industry experts, entrepreneurs to push initiative of financial education in Finance 2.0. And so just so that people know, so in less than, let's say 5 years, so 4 years and a half, we have trained over 100,000 professionals, all online from 100 countries, have participated in CFT programs to accelerate their careers in fintech and new finance. So we are in London, but we're also present in Singapore, working with the government in Singapore, in Abu Dhabi with the regulator in Abu Dhabi, ADGMA, Hong Kong with Cyberport, Luxembourg by also setting up academies for the government in Luxembourg, and Budapest with the Budapest Institute of Banking, and recently in France. Why am I saying that? Because I think I'll be very happy to share what we do with governments as an EdTech platform to help professionals, but also now students to learn and find opportunities.
Thank you, Chairman, for your insights. And it's going to be very interesting to talk about regulations from your perspective with your international practical experience and as well the communities that you serve. Michael, you want to share a few thoughts on how you started ELSA Speak and and a few things about yourself and the company.
Sure. Actually, I'm not the co-founder. I'm just the country manager. So Elsa Speak was started from obviously our founder Vu Van, who came across an experience that, obviously she's very educated here in Vietnam, and she had a really great education in the U.S. However, she found it very difficult to communicate with her colleagues in the U.S. And there and that kind of came the inspiration for the company, because to hire a speech coach, it's a few $100s an hour. She wanted something that's more accessible to help people kind of break that barrier and bridge that communication gap. And so that's why that's how our technology, our company was started. So our company started as an app, and it's kind of extended to different channels, so it could be web, it could be anything as well. And what our technology does is listens to our learners' accent, English, and then gives feedback on how to improve certain down to the phoneme level. And so that part kind of is what kind of drove me to join Elsa. Growing up, I'm a child of an immigrant family from the U.S. We didn't have much growing up, so there was two things that are really, really big in my family. One was education, the second was entrepreneurship. And kind of putting those two together, I was very fortunate enough to use entrepreneurship when I was in university to pay for my university. And that kind of set the trajectory for my life, for my career. And when it comes to my career, that's what I want to spend the rest of my career doing, is finding ways, channels, products, companies to really promote and uplift communities through and make an impact through education, as well as entrepreneurship. So.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Cheng, can you share a few thoughts about yourself and PNV and your goals with your NGO?
Thank you, Vlad. Hello, everyone. So I am Trang, the country representative of Passerelle Numeric Vietnam. So let's call it PNV to easy, because I love education, and I believe education is a very good tool to transform and help young generation to acquire and to develop themselves. So when I joined PN, and I really appreciate what PN want to bring for the underprivileged youth. As you know, in the Southeast Asia, there are a lot of youth that they have to stop studying from high school because they cannot afford for higher education. So that's why in PN, we provide vocational training for higher education for underprivileged youth in Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Philippines. So in Vietnam, we already have 12 years based in Vietnam, and we have already more than 500 young generation youth to help them to have a good and qualified IT training, and but also then to have a good job and then help their family to escape the poverty. So why we part of the EdTech sector, actually at the beginning, before the pandemic, as you said, Vlad, before the pandemic, our teachers or trainer believe that face-to-face teaching is good for our students because they come from zero. Our students, when they come with PN, they even didn't know how to turn on the button of the computers. That is where they are, because they come from remote and mountainous area. So how we can train them to be a good programmer, a good coder. So it's a lot of work during 3 years that we have to work. So face-to-face, we believe that the only way can help us to bring the student through that journey. However, with the pandemic everything had to change. We don't have the choice, actually. And we face a lot of difficulties to bring the student and teacher for the online lessons and everything. Besides that training, we also need to follow up the students. because they come from very low level of technical. So we need to follow them, evaluate them. And at that time, we lack on that evaluation assessment tools for this. And though we partner with the academic vocational training college in Da Nang, but they're also the same like us. They don't have all these type of tools. So that's why we have to work and we look around for all the solutions and think of different solutions, build up different solutions to catch up with the curriculum. So it's a lot of things happen, and naturally it brings us to EdTech in that way.
Thank you, Chang. And indeed, one of my next questions will be on impacts of pandemic and what would be those challenges and solutions to those challenges, and how each of you tackled those in the last 2 years. And before that, Matthew, can you share? Obviously, you're not part of the EdTech sector per se, but you have been supporting international investors and local ones within the sector in many ways. Can you share a bit more about how you support the international investors in the space?
Yeah, thanks, Wade. Yeah, I certainly come from a different angle from the other speakers. So our client Vietnam, I started the Vietnam business here around just over 7 years ago to help foreign investors, predominantly foreign inbound. Both we've got 130 staff, licensing, lawyers, tax, accounting, payroll, transaction support. So we have quite a lot of specialties or areas that we look after. EdTech's been one which has been very popular in recent years, and you're dealing with issues with Ministry of Education, with your Ministry of Labour, be it, is it MOAT in Vietnam, is it a MOAT education approval, is it a vocational approval, is it a pure technology platform, are you dealing with the Ministry of Industry and Trade with an e-commerce registration, and how that fits together and the grey areas that exist. So we've helped sell-side startups who have started EdTech sell to foreign investors. We've helped foreign come in. We've helped local EdTech, and trying to, as the other speakers talked about, trying to sort of thread the needle or go through the maze and trying to find those solutions of how to deliver what the market needs, because the market needs is probably, in my opinion, easier to assess. It's the regulatory side that is really tough. So that's where we get involved and we help out and have some interesting journeys and experiences that we're happy to share today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matthew. So then, because Trang mentioned it already, the pandemics, obviously it had a major impact on quite a lot of industries, a lot of them in a negative way, and other industries and potentially EdTech as well were impacted positively. It created that spark that was needed to further drive the sector forward, also from a regulations perspective, user perspective, and business perspective as well. So my question would be for all of you, how did the EdTech sector change and evolve in these last 2 years during the pandemic? And where are we now, currently? What is our current situation from your experience of the EdTech sector here in Vietnam? Are we at a moment where we can pivot towards maybe matching our partners and our peers from Singapore, maybe, or Indonesia or Thailand, or are we still at the very early stages of our development? Michael, maybe you can start with this, and then we'll go with Chairman and Chang.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of go back. Yeah, I think, you know, that saying necessity is the mother of invention. I think that's definitely what happened here. I think we kind of started off, I think prior to the pandemic, everything, education and technology were kind of at odds with one another, each one trying to replace the other. And then once one is shut down, what happens is we saw quite a lot of EdTech coming in, being, okay, how do we partner more with schools? How do we provide you what you need and in a way that you are already familiar with teaching? And I think that's really the way forward for both traditional education as well as technology, rather, to work together and remove kind of the EdTech phrase, and it's just kind of education after this. So that's kind of why.
Chaman, what's your experience?
Yes, no, thanks a lot. So no, we've seen huge opportunities I think the COVID has just made an acceleration of the growth of digitalization in organizations, especially, in our industry is education, but we are supporting the finance industry. And suddenly, people in the industry of finance couldn't do their job because they didn't know how to use the tools and what they needed to know. So we've seen, a demand from governments to really, really quickly, do this big assessment of skills gap, because people realize that, the digitalization of organization, and especially the finance industry, will, be a 6-year program with, a mapping and everything, but COVID hit. And most of the people were not able to do their job being at home. So there was a huge demand for knowledge. How do you use the tech skills? How do you use AI? Very, very quickly. But the problem is that we see is that traditional university or educational, like the traditional ways of teaching, were not adapting. So suddenly government were asking us, CFT, how do you basically create a very quick assessment of skills gap, what to focus on, understanding the need of the whole market to help deliver the whole strategy for the nation, to build a program at scale so that people can really learn and apply it very quickly to their job. So what we did, and I can talk about the skills gap assessment we've done with the Fintech job report, but that is essential. What is the population I need so that they can do their proper job? What is in need? So we've done that, for all around the world. So I can share with you
we can talk about that later on skills.
Yes, and what we've done is also about what do people need to learn. So what we've done is that we build instead of a few programs, we've done hundreds of new programs just by knowing that there was a huge need, by connecting with the whole industry, asking them, we need to get people to learn very quickly on those type of programs. So we use online education. We build ourselves a new platform. So what we have is that we have specialization courses, which is people can take those programs online, taught by industry experts, so not academic, but all industry experts from all around the world. And some of the government, and I will mention the example of Singapore because we are in Asia, we are in the UK, but I want to give the example of Singapore just as an example. And Singapore said, okay, we need to really quickly upskill and reskill our population. CFT has this program online. All our people need to learn. You will get an opportunity to take the program, subsidies by the government, encouraged by so it means that people will be learning almost for free. So they have access to this program. Organizations have also an incentive, are being encouraged to send their employee to learn program about anything. They are paid, I think, something around $15 per hour to send the employee to learn something new. So that is really an alignment between the individuals, the government, and the organization. So that was something that for me was phenomenal, to have this encouragement from the government, from the regulator and the organization to really upskill and reskill very quickly individuals. And what we've seen is a demand for, let's say, a platform for continuous education. So CFT, we built over 300 new courses in a very short period of time because the demand was there. People were not, adapting to the new world. So we had to deliver quickly. So we've seen a boom. And we've seen an alignment, and it's really, really crucial. And what we've seen also is working with governments, organization, and ecosystem. We have put in place a framework for upskilling, reskilling, training talent in the industry. And what I must say is that teaching online is not teaching in classroom. You can't do the layer and by adding a tech. It's something that any organization has to understand. Teachers that are teaching in classroom are not necessarily the best to teach online. You need to have this ability to teach online to attract the attention of the people. What they are learning is what they need to learn. It's not 100 in an hour. You need to be very condensed and very concise so that people can really capture what they need to learn. So that is one thing that we'd like to change, but we spend a lot of time at creating those programs for governments and organizations. And what I would say is that lack of industry knowledge, lack of tech knowledge, and ways of working and ways of learning is crucial. So that is what we've done during the pandemic, and we're sharing our methodology now to provide education at scale to governments and organizations.
Thank you, Chairman. From your NGO perspective, Cheng, what were your views in the last 2 years? How did you grow your NGO, your support for your community and stakeholders? Did you have as well connections with authorities, government, and different types of support from various other stakeholders?
As I mentioned before, we still stick with traditional training, but with the COVID coming, and then it brings a lot of opportunities. I can see from the perspective of the learner. Our students, they are come from underprivileged background, and usually learning something online for them is totally new. They never have that kind of experience before. So, it's really hard for them. But now, after few months, then they get to know with this. They accept online learning as the part of their training, not like a reserve like before. And from the perspective of the teachers, it's the same. At the beginning, they say, okay, it just wait and wait, but now they know that, okay, I have to use different tools, I have to use different platform to pull the curriculum continue. We cannot wait anymore. It's a waste of time. And they more flexible and more creative in a different way to get different resources. So I think that is a very big opportunities for us to train underprivileged youth when the learners more acceptable with this online training. And with the stakeholder, specifically now is the college, vocational training college that we partner with in academic side. They also now open more with a different solution, because before, the same, everything can be offline. You just need to face, but now solution, whether we can do it in another way, whether we can teach in another way, whether we can achieve this kind of skill in another way instead of one way like before. So it opened a lot of discussion and collaboration, and it can bring more opportunities for different partners, because we also we're partnering with different IT companies, and sometimes they also have a different type of module that they're willing to provide us for free. For example, Elsa Speak. There's also one of our partner, and they provide about 130 token for our students to study English online. So, instead of you have to come to the class, now you can study online. And before, the learners say, no, it's not work. But now they work very well. Our students can just speak on the screen, but they're very comfortable with that.
Yeah. So I noticed already that there is a very strong alignment between the industry players in the EdTech sector. It's not as if it's a profit-driven industry. It's more of a culture-driven, education-driven, and value creation type of industry, and that's how all the stakeholders automatically start working together, collaborating to create that value. And thank you for your thoughts, Cheng. And you mentioned before opportunities. Now that we kind of set the stage of where we are with the sector in Vietnam, what opportunities exist then to move forward and to create more value for your businesses and for the sector in general? And probably it's just for the sake of time, it would be worth to focus on one idea on the opportunities that you believe would really make sense. So maybe Michael, you can share something that maybe your business would see it as an opportunity, and it's important to take advantage of in the future moving forward?
Yeah, so for when it comes to ELSA, one big focus for us is our B2B business. And so the big question for us is, how do we work with companies or schools in order to enrich and complement their programs already. So we started as part of our business back in 2020, and for this year it's going to be one of our large growth segments. Yeah, so I mean, because the reality is, Vietnam during this pandemic time has been very fortunate in that it's stepping up in kind of like the value chain of technology. It's becoming a bigger and bigger hub and resource hub for engineering, and so with that comes a really huge gap of communication. I think there's already a big focus on education, and I think obviously education, improving the whole entire education ecosystem in Vietnam, it's a very big task, and it's something that's going to take a really long time. But in terms of the short term, there's a communication skills gap that needs to be addressed so that we can meet our short term. We as in Vietnam can meet our short term goals as well as setting the stage for long term. And I think the more and more we're able to penetrate and work with corporations and even schools on helping them close that communication gap, are really excited to go alongside the growth of Vietnam.
That's right. Matthew, coming back to you, you worked with quite a lot of investors that were involved in vocational training, in EdTech, or education as a separate broad sector. Based on their experience and you working with them, where do you see potential opportunities for investors within the sector?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I think Chaman mentioned that just as a foundation, that just because someone's a good teacher doesn't make them a good online teacher, and we've seen that. I've got young children, and we've certainly seen that because we've seen this before COVID, but COVID accelerated your mainstream education, your primary, secondary, your tertiary educations moving online, and they've done that successfully in various ways. And that's the mainstream, and that's still an education product, whether they deliver it online or a school or a hybrid. That's that's for large established, and that's mainstream. Where we're seeing opportunities and where we're seeing successes and the challenges is in finding specific needs. Is a whole range of English language and different elements to that. Michael's B2B focus and developing, it's those sort of opportunities. So whether it's a specialist, whether it's a STEM, whether it's an element of vocational specific for an industry or business, it's trying to find those niches and trying to deliver it in another way. And it's the coding, and it's those. So the businesses we've seen successful have picked a niche. They satisfy a need, and they push the relationships, and they can deliver that in a way. If you want to be everything to everyone, it's not going to work. It's still a fragmented, demand-driven from different perspectives. So that specialties has made it work. And there is the problem with the regulation in Vietnam. There is, if you are taking specialties, quite often there's a gap. Quite often there's an unknown regulation, and you are having to sometimes take a risk, sometimes delay while you go through. And the last thing I'll say is that people, when they get their specialty, do they need a physical location? And that's sometimes an internal challenge. Do they need a physical base? Is it purely online? And others, does regulation require them to have one? Well, they don't need one. It's a pure online product, and they're forced to by regulation. So you've got these challenges, and there's cost implication, there's implications in setting up the business. But get your niche, get that delivery process, find the need, and that's where we're seeing success. So I'm talking generally, but that's sort of, I think it feeds into each of the three panelists about their experiences and where their successes has come from. It parallels to what we see in the market here.
Thanks, Matthew. And you mentioned those regulatory challenges. We're gonna get to those in a few minutes as well, and maybe you can share your ideas on the practicalities of actually dealing with setting up an education technology venture, which It can be, as you said, it's online, but unfortunately you have to have a space as well. Otherwise, you cannot have a legal entity. So those are the catch-22 situations that we have to deal with all the time. Chairman, coming back to you, one main opportunity that you see for the sector, and maybe how your business will tackle this.
Yes, no, thanks a lot. Perhaps I'll share about what we've done because during COVID, what we've seen from the industry, but that can be also implemented to other industry, which is finance and fintech. But we've seen the rise of the fintech industry. Lots of tech companies, have been emerging. Some of them have been coming unicorn as well. So what we've done as an education platform, what we want is to be very close to the employers to know what is in demand, what are the jobs that are being created, so that we spend the past few months, and we've just launched the Fintech job report. We call that Technology is Eating Finance. But we've done is that we connected with the top 225 largest fintech companies around the world. And we asked them, what are the jobs that you are creating? What are the jobs that you are creating that didn't even exist 2 years ago before COVID? And we've analyzed 40,000 new jobs. And what we've done is that we've done a big assessment about what are the skills and the competencies you need so that people can get into those jobs. So we are doing it as a book that we're giving for the community. It's really, but now it helps government, regulators, organizations, universities, not only job seekers, students, but also professionals, to get a pathway so that they can be into traditional job, and how do you transfer your skills to digital jobs. And that is for us as an EdTech company helping to know what to teach, but for also people to learn and identify what could be so that they can be into jobs of the future as things are being transformed. Mm-hmm. So this work that we're doing, we know that a lot of governments and regulators in the industry are using that as their work so that they can create pathways and help people to transform very quickly and transform them into jobs. There's huge opportunity into the finance, the fintech industry. I know that for the past 2 years, a lot of great things have happened in Vietnam, being very close to the industry. I'm not going to name big companies, but they are all looking for talent. And I think what I want to say is that we have put in place an initiative during COVID that perhaps will help, our audience. But we've done over the last summer, because we've seen that students were very left behind during the COVID. Not a lot of them could have work experience. We call that an internship. And what we ask as recruiter for any companies today is for anyone to have a work experience. Of course, hard skills, soft skills, etc., but is to have that work experience. So we've worked with the whole industry in fintech, and we've launched the Global Fintech Internship, where we provided a fintech internship for 1,000 students in 3 weeks. All of them had a chance to learn about fintech, learn about AI, learn about platforms, got to work in team of 5 or 6, all students. We have also very good people from Vietnam who got into this opportunity to learn and work on case studies provided by some of the largest fintech industries and startup, and mentored by professionals, but train 50 countries, 48% being women as well. They all learn digital skills, soft skills in teamwork and communication, worked on case studies with leading organizations, mentored by experienced professionals. And what we did is that we did a report, which is called the Impact Report, which is our methodology of how do you bring education at scale by using technology, and we're giving back to the community. So if anyone in the audience are looking for framework to bring education in anything, but education in your industry, and looking for great talent, we are giving back to the community our framework and methodology. I think it can help a lot, and we are welcoming, it was an enlightenment experience for us. We've learned a lot, and now those 1,000 1,000 students are part of a global community, and they are learning and sharing peer-to-peer learning. We believe in online a lot for Vietnamese, to want to, after that, connect with people from all around the world in the industry. And that is for them a great step, to start their career.
Thank you, Chairman. Chang, from your NGO perspective, working closely with other stakeholders in the education and technology sectors, where do you see the opportunity moving forward for your NGO providing value for your community?
Yeah, well, as an NGO, usually we work directly with the beneficiaries. In any field, that's the way we used to do. But now EdTech can bring different opportunities from what we can do, what we can provide, and what we can support for the beneficiary community that we serve.
Why is it different? Why is the situation now in EdTech providing that different level of engagement?
Yeah, before, the only way as I share, the only way is to meet face-to-face, work with authority, do everything like we need to meet each other to gain the trust. But because of the pandemic, everyone get used to the online tools and get used to meet people online. So everything can be transferred, everything can be online. And then the solution we provide for our beneficiaries also can be very different. Before, we always think that, okay, if we want to train the underprivileged students in remote area, that's the only way that we should come there to go to the high school or secondary school and bring some section of digital skill, help them to have a very basic knowledge. Because, when we come there, no students know about how to do the presentation on PowerPoint, for example, something very basic skill like this. Yeah, and some of them very even didn't know very basic of the mindset of coding, everything simple like this. And they very blind in their career choices. The only way they think it's just some very few information. Yeah, but now with the online learning and with the EdTech, it brings more values for our community. They can have a different choices, and we can give a different open resource for them to learn, and everything online. We just need facilities, set up facilities, or maybe just a smartphone for them. Then everything.
The online engagements help the NGOs yourself to reach your stakeholders in your communities in much better ways than before. Now everyone is using it, and it really enables creating that synergy between you and your community as well. Thank you, Chang. Matthew, coming back to you, you mentioned about regulatory issues and how they impact investors. Can you share with us what are those specific limitations and challenges that investors have when they're looking to set up a venture in EdTech in Vietnam? The market is there, the demand is there. However, the complexities of the regulatory market entry issues are there as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you've got, it's an interesting challenge, and it's specific to each situation, but you're crossing over what is traditional education, regulated by Ministry of Education and Training, which is, there's decrees, there's a foundation for education built into those decrees that rely upon physical presence. And that doesn't translate as well to EdTech. So that's the first challenge. And are you education? Will MOET treat you as an education provider or not? So you've got your first challenge, and we'll park that. You've got your second, which is Ministry of Labour, which looks after vocational. So are you vocational? And therefore you've got more flexibility. And if you are, what's your curriculum? How will they assess that? And it's a lighter touch on vocational, but there's still a regulatory element of that. And a lot of providers want to be vocational, but there's this issue of where does it fit? It could fit in both. And does MOET take control, or you need opinions from the ministry? And so you've got this first challenge of regulatory of where you sit. If you're doing business to business professional training, you're not involved in any of those. So in theory, you should be okay to provide something as via a platform. But then you've got your e-commerce requirements. If you're providing a platform in Vietnam, an e-commerce platform, requires a specific e-commerce platform license, which is Ministry of Industry and Trade, and they're really hard to get now. And even selling your own products, on just your own education, if you're there, they're requiring evidence that you're registered with Ministry of Education or Ministry of Labour. And if you're a business provider, you're probably not registered either. So therefore, will they actually let you have a platform, even if you could satisfy the requirements? So you've got these interconnects that were not designed for EdTech. And so going through them, or as a lot of players do, just push ahead. Put the platform, it's online, wait to the authorities to do something, and hopefully that they're confused and no one touches you, and you can get somewhere or get to the point where you can get regulated in one of those parts and work through. And we do see those who just don't fit in any of the gaps, and therefore they got no choice but to push ahead. So that's the fundamentals of regulatory problems. And we work with a lot of providers. Often there is no easy solution. They've got to choose the best of the worst paths that we have, because raising money as a non-compliant education provider in a broad sense can be difficult as well. So being as compliant as possible. The last thing I'll say is that we see, because it's a growing sector, because it's a sector in demand with significant growth, investors are much more comfortable with a level of risk than they are at other sectors. So the transactions we've seen with relatively early stage startups where investors will come in, they will accept risk, they will accept regulatory issues. And so we're not seeing, like other sectors, valuation decrease where there's regulatory uncertainty. We're still seeing confidence in the sector from those investors.
Thanks, Matthew. So we have a couple of clear challenges here that appear, one from regulatory perspective, but as well, we have support from the authorities, from the government as well, that kind of fits in on the other side of the spectrum. There is support. The government in Vietnam as well, and I'm sure in other countries, is pushing towards digitizing a lot of their institutions. They're promoting the online education curriculums, universities, high schools. Everyone had to be online one way or another in the last 2 years. So there is an obvious push from the authorities' side towards promoting this sector and this evolution of education towards something that maybe it's EdTech, or maybe it will be something else in the future. So there's a lot of contradictions in that sense. What about you, Michael and Chaman? Where do you see these limitations and these challenges that you still face potentially, and how do you maybe go around them?
Yeah, I'll mention. I think for us, it's very much to find an alignment of where you can really add value. Today, what we see is that from working with a lot of governments and regulators, is that it's really industry-led. There's a huge talent gap. There's this big industry that is actually booming, which is the fintech industry. I know I can share only what I know, but the fintech industry is really growing, and whenever we talk, because we're very close to the industry, we talk with the company, they're looking for talent. And there's this big gap because talent is not there. So the industry that needs, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of the regulators are seeing that, and how do you bridge that? So they have no choice because of course, the academic is there. So what we do is that we are just in between and trying to find solution to the academic world by working also closely with universities and create this very quick, framework to upskill and reskill everyone, and working with the governments. And I really believe in this alignment between universities, government, and us as EdTech platform to work together and find ways we can really very quickly, create a lot of learning so that people are not left behind. There's no tolerance for unemployment and etc. because things are being, changed. Some people can't do their job, and some people, for example, in the case of some of the people we've seen, they can't do their job. They're looking for opportunities. Industry is looking for talent. How do you bridge that gap? So for us, we're are coming with our solution by creating, learning program but very, very in a detailed manner, learning outcome, why the people need to learn, what do they need to learn in, and creating pathways for them to accelerate today, which is really, really interesting. Perhaps, it will help. But what is really interesting, what we see in the fintech industry is that today, in the case of, for example, Singapore, they are lacking of talent. They won't necessarily get people from the finance to get into fintech, but today they are reskilling and upskilling people from our doctors, consultant, technologies, health tech, people from totally different background who are coming and get into fintech, and they are actually providing not only learning but also internship at 30, 40, 50-year-old, and all online and also physical. So they are making it hybrid, and it works very, very, very well. So to come to your point, or how do you make, I think there's no choice. Universities today are not adapting fast enough to create things that are relevant to the industry. They are working closely with EdTech companies who are much faster. We do a lot of test and learn. If it doesn't work, we can really quickly, change things very quickly. It doesn't need 6 months to create a program. In a month, we can create program and test and see if it works. We are a startup, so we are very agile. And if it doesn't work, we change things. So we make things very smooth, and we don't do it for 100 or 200. We are doing for 10,000 people. So in a very short period of time, we can really transform people. So that is the reality of perhaps, working with large organizations versus, a startup model. And this is what we see, a demand from, governments and regulators of EdTech companies to come and help and support, so we can give much more growth to in the industry. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. And Matthew mentioned, all the difficulty, but I think there's a need for being probably more collaborative and create much more partnership. And this is what we see is really much, a collaboration with alignment between different stakeholders.
Exactly, completely agree. Just as you said, I think collaboration is critical here, especially in EdTech, because you have these two separate sectors: the education sector, which is extremely standardized and latent in its development, and then you have the IT sector, which is the most agile sector ever when you look at the broad range of industries. So then, how do you get these two sectors to actually work together? It's only by enabling this collaboration and stakeholder engagement at all levels. So the government, the authorities, the NGOs, the business providers, investors. In reality, that's why I think this sector is really exciting, because it has to capture everything just because of the way it's designed to work from the outset. So thank you, Chaman, for your insights there. Cheng, how do you see these connections between education, between technology, and how do you bridge the gap and create more value within this type of challenging environment?
Yeah, actually, how to say? I think it is always come from the mindset. Education and technology now it stick together. Because the fourth revolution brings everything into technology, and education, I think, is also the part of the trend. However, because we're dealing with people, we nurture people in the education, especially in our case, is we provide the 3-year training of the college degree for the students, working with the academic partner, and our academic partner, they are from the public agency. So, they still very strict with on the procedure of the paperwork and everything. And I agree with Matthew mentioned that when you stick with something regulation, they're very strict on this. So how we can deal with all that challenges? And I think it's come from first the mindset of the management or the leader level, that if they want to change, that they want to bring more skill with different solution, that is the part. of the journey that we need to go through. And thanks to the pandemic, it make it and prove it that, yeah, we can make it in this way rather than traditional way only. And that's why I think if you have a good mindset, and then education and technology can go together with the teachers and the student involved in this. I can see that at the beginning, some of the teachers, when they see the online education, they can see, okay, they get my job. I will lose my job because I will not teach the student anymore. We have a platform already. But in reality, it's not in this way. When I discuss with other partners in other or my colleagues in other university, they think that the hybrid is like an education online or some platform to support with the and with the face-to-face and follow up with the teachers, then they bring the teachers at the level of the coach or facilitator. It means they wrap up with different skill, but still can follow up with the student, make sure with them, and still maintain the part of education that is human-based interaction. So that is the complement together with the education and technology to building step by step for this kind of gap.
Thank you, Trang. Michael, coming back to you, we talked a lot about skills here. If we would have to simplify the standard education model is essentially about building knowledge, building general knowledge, building particular knowledge, and that's what all of us have done. And where EdTech comes in and supplements that is at the skill level, building skills, which means what is the practicality of that knowledge? How do you transform that knowledge into something that can create value further, right? So talking about skill set and the value add at the EdTech sector, how do you develop these skill set fast for your community? How do you use your programs to really enable skill development and not just building knowledge, which can be found in a university, online, and pretty much everywhere? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, specifically for English, I mean, for I guess any language learning, it comes down to the ability to practice, right? So I remember when I first came to Vietnam, people would always go around looking for people to practice English with. Obviously, the pandemic made that not possible, and talking to yourself doesn't give you really good feedback. So that's where kind of ELSA was really good in the sense that it gave people the chance to speak to obviously the app, get feedback, and improve there. And that kind of lies our purpose, right? So if we can get, so our vision is obviously to get to that level, but for everybody. And so even when you think about going down to like a countryside school, for instance, where the teacher there obviously would not have a really great English speaking accent, the teacher there could then teach the students the hard skills, you know, writing, reading, and then leverage ELSA, for instance, for the pronunciation part. So fill in where the teachers are lacking. And to do that, obviously, being technology, we need to be a bit more agile, right? So it's not about forcing our app into schools, public schools, or in the countryside and into the hands of people, but it's also going alongside where the development is going. So a lot of schools now are digitizing, integrating LMS systems. So our focus now is how do we make our technology available on all these systems so that when they get integrated into the schools, there is a platform, there is a tool that could can support and engage students wherever they are, whenever they are, on whatever device or software they're using. I think that's the most important part.
Gemma, you talk quite a lot about skills. I know your business focuses as well on building skills for students, but building skills as well for professionals, transforming their workflow, their experience, and their mindsets into adopting completely different types of jobs and different types of activities. Can you share more about that and how you achieve that?
Yes, no, thanks a lot. we talk about what are needed in terms of skills. What do people need to learn, or acquire so that they can get into job of the future? What we know is that, of course, it's important to have hard skills, but today, because of hard skills, it's knowledge skills about, what is AI, how do I, apply it very quickly to my job, because what you don't want to learn is something that sticks to your mind or your brain, but how do you really apply it? So what we do is that get the people to learn so that they can learn, and how do it really applied if you were on the trading floor or compliance or any other job, how what you learn can be very applied to your job immediately, so that it's not sticks to their theory. So learning so that you can apply to your job. But what we think is really, really essential today is how do you train people to develop more soft skills, which is teamwork, adaptability, collaboration. And what we think is really, really important is mindset. How do you think like an entrepreneur? You don't want people to become an entrepreneur, because I don't want people to quit their job, but I want people to actually start thinking like a builder, which is not something I've learned when I was on the trading floor or in wealth management. I didn't have to learn all those type of skills. But today, as the world is building, you need people to think like an entrepreneur. How do you basically first be a very good project manager? How do you become a very good data scientist, and being very applied to what we do? So what we've launched as an example, because I love talking with example, we launched program in partnership with the largest fintech unicorns. I don't know if you know Revolut as an example. Revolut being a very large fintech, one of the largest fintech companies. So we partner with them and we do program for, let's say, hundreds of professionals around the world to learn how do you think like a Revolut. And they give a case study, and you have people from professionals being together in group of 5, 7, and have this ability to develop soft skills. How do you present? How do you build a business case? How do you think like an entrepreneur? And how do you build a project that perhaps, could be, you can learn a lot by being with people you've never learned with or worked with before, from totally different background and countries, so that after that you can go to your own organization and you start building in a different way. So those are things that I think for us is really, really important. So I wanted to share, because I think if it was one that really could help, and that is what we can add value as EdTech, is to now teach people soft skills and mindset. Which is perhaps something that, and being very close to the industry, those are the things that are really, really, really important for you now, if you want to accelerate your career.
Matthew, coming back to you and maybe doing a very small case study on a client. You have 130 employees across 3 offices, all of them university degrees, educated in a very standardized format. Obviously when you're aware of how skills are important, the soft skills, the core skills actually, which is the new way of calling them. You're doing training programs as well, and you understand that the employees need to develop constantly. The old way of doing it is not enough. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you work with the teams to achieve this skill building mindset?
I would say my answer now is different to what it was pre-COVID. So that, as we've said a few times, there's been a dramatic shift. The acceptance and the need for an online element to learning is there, and it's accepted, it's wanted, it's the desire. Before, it was a bit of a push situation. There was some good traction, but not universally accepted. It is now. So we see from a learning point of view, and this is just sort of a very narrow perspective here in my organization, but you see the delivery and the switch to an online learning, and that being the default, and that being what makes people comfortable, has been dramatic change. My biggest challenge is actually forcing them back into a room together and doing education together, which is important for bonding and important for office environment interaction, but moving them away from this mindset of online is where we prefer to learn. And that means that the acceptance for one-off courses, the acceptance for language training, the acceptance for personal development, professional development, it's there, it's a given. And that wasn't the case prior. It was a very, very patchy, some loved it, some did not. Now it's the norm. And I think that's the biggest change we've seen. And I think comes back to my earlier point there. If you have your niche, if you have your area in education, be it a business focus, vocational, or wherever it might be, drive with that, and that can go deep. The acceptance is there. You need the right product and understand delivery and all those elements, but acceptance from the community is there now. And yes, that's my experience, at least in my role.
Thank you, Matthew. Chang, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, in PN, we also have to train a lot in soft skills, like Gentleman said, because we prepare for the students from the underserved background to be the independent professional. So we also at the beginning, it's faced a lot of difficulties when you teach the student online about teamwork, for example, or communication. So now we also have to build up a module named Learning to Learn Online. So to equip the students some very basic skill, how to learn online. And I believe that it should be the part of the journey for the EdTech student, not just only PN students. Yeah, so that they can be comfortable and build up this kind of skill easily. And and then it changed the perspective of the trainer, that if you teach them something online, and imagine that they have to work online with communication. Before we just focus face-to-face communication, but now it's an online communication, how to be effective. So it changed completely everything into that way. So I think it is really interesting to see different perspective, and like Matthew said, it's the different groups and different needs of the companies or the learners. Then the products of EdTech can be very different based on the needs.
And what about innovation? We talked a lot here about technology, but technology innovates yearly, and the development of the innovation has a cycle that it's 10 times faster than probably the entire education sector. Companies innovate in technology in 1 year, and 2 years later, the innovation is already gone, and there's a new technology that appears. How does that fit with the EdTech sector? Do you have maybe some examples of innovative ways to reach out to your stakeholders, or that you're looking to implement or adapt, potentially AI or any other things that you really think that are really interesting for your communities and for your business and product? Michael, you want to start?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of it's a really interesting question, because yeah, you're right, there's a lot of innovation going on, and I think we say no to a lot more things than we say yes to at our company when we're developing, and the reason why is because, yeah, you can create something really cool, but if no one uses it, or no one knows how to use it, or it's not helpful to anybody, then it doesn't matter. And so that's why I think for maybe different verticals are different, but I think when it comes to education and technology, you kind of have to be only a few steps ahead of where the curve is. But if you're too far ahead, you're standing alone in a dark room somewhere by yourself.
Interesting. Yeah,
that's kind of how we approach it.
Interesting. So you have to maintain that balance to be able to make sure that you kind of speak the same language. You're aligned with where everyone is, and you're not across where you need to be. Interesting. Cham-Am, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're trying to push a lot of boundaries.
Okay.
So what we've done, and as an example, but I think this is really, really important to really try to encourage people to learn in a different way. And we love the learn by doing, by experimenting. So ourselves, we push also boundaries by, we preach that in order to teach, you need to learn so that you can test and teach back, right? So what we've done, because we are quite involved now in the metaverse, I mean, probably, you know, you've learned a lot about the metaverse and the thing, but why we are doing this and what we've done, of course, we use on the first side, we use a lot of data. We use a lot of ways so that we can engage a lot more the students, and that is having proactive ways so that people are not learning alone. Using online platform, the reality is that the individual can be really alone, but we believe in the peer-to-peer learning a lot. So what we do is that we create around a course, like a huge community of people so that they can interact with the teachers, they interact with their peers, they can engage, and we are quite good at it. And we also have a good understanding of the progression of the participant online, the learner online. And for that, that's why we have, I think, you know, in general, I don't know if I can ask question, but do you know how is the percentage of someone who starts a MOOC program online? What is the completion rate in general? No, 7%. We have 92%. So we use a lot of those tools to engage participants to finish it, because if they don't finish, they can't have the certification and can't find an opportunity for them. So we use a lot of tools to engage people to complete their program, because otherwise it's not going to work. So we use data, we use emails, we engage a lot, we organize events all around. How do you make sure that anyone that takes any program online will finish it? So that is a lot of different innovation on that. There's a lot of different ways. We've tested hundreds, thousands of different ways, but I think we have cracked down the model so that people can really complete. And the second thing is that what we love when our participants start to be really into this learning is now how to learn by doing. So we bought a land on the sandbox. So I don't know if people are aware, in the metaverse, now there's the sandbox. So CFT invested in a land. And what we have now asked our community of alumni, whoever wants to come and build a building with us so that they can learn and teach. And we, as an educational platform, we want to analyze the behavior of our alumni to see what are they doing, what are, you know, their limitation, or how do they learn. That is the best way for us to really, after that, create program so that we can know what to do, what to not do, and so people really liking it. We have even launched, you know, an initiative which is NFTs. So we've launched 888 tigers for the Lunar New Year that we gave to our alumni, and was a good way for all our professionals. So we did only 888, but we could have done more, but we wanted to make a limited edition to encourage people to learn how to open a wallet, to know what is the world of NFT. So those examples is ways we can help people to learn and push really boundaries. So that is an example.
That's fantastic. And I just was about what you're saying about the NFTs and about the wallets. Vietnam as well is looking to further develop its blockchain regulatory framework to potentially be part of the future of the Fintech and of the metaverse and everything in between. Growth, which may be significant or as well for EdTech. So it's interesting to see how education technology fits in within that that broad framework, which is essentially highly innovative, breaking boundaries, and happy to see that growth and development. I'll switch a bit the discussion and take a question from one of our attendees. Blue Weasley is wondering how ethics in technology is addressed to students in EdTech by the organizations here. So ethics. Maybe some of you would like to take this question or address some thoughts on it.
Can I just say then, I'm not the education provider that the others are. I think there's two elements to that. I'm not sure that the purpose of the question, but ethics in both the product, the backing, the organization behind it, what they're trying to achieve, what they're doing with their course materials, how they're delivering, and making sure that, you know, the ethics of the business is for the right reasons and someone you want to be associated with, as opposed to the ethics within the course and the students and what they're learning and how sort of that genuine relationship and delivery and that the honest caring about the students. And I'm more looking at the business side in the providers and in why they want to get into it. Is it a quick buck? Is there some altruistic reason, this non-profit, this giving back that some of our panelists are looking at now? And if, you know, and that's an interesting one, because we do see participants trying to take advantage of the sector with a less than ideal reason for entering other than, look, there's money there, well, let's jump at it. And what course materials, what are you going to present? What's the platform? How's it going to work? Oh, we'll build it later, but we're chasing the money. And I think that, I just want to sort of put it out there. I think that's an ethical issue that is being faced, and that the industry will weed itself out, because it's a nascent and expanding industry that does exist in the background with some of the participants and the movers trying to take advantage of a sort of the land rush that EdTech is at the moment.
Thanks, Matthew. Anyone else would like to add? If not, I have two interesting questions lined up. We're almost at the end, and I'd like to take this chance as well to invite the attendees to share any questions that they're looking to ask the panelists. We're here to support. We're here to give as much as value as we can. In the meantime, I'd like to kind of finalize this session with two questions. And I'll start first with Matthew. He mentioned just now investor perspective and where EdTech fits within that international investment framework. And the question for you, Matthew, would be how would that let's say advice from your opinion, working with the investors entering the market in Vietnam, then the challenges and the opportunities, especially for the EdTech sector, what would be your advice for new entrants, for new international investors, startups that are looking to set up a venture and take advantage from your experience with the practicalities of these matters?
Yeah, most people coming in are coming in from an education focus, not an investment, not a business focus. That's what we generally see. There's this idea, and it's education driven. And it may be a tech driven, it may be, you know, the key parts, but it's not business driven. So my advice is deal with the structure early, understand whether what your exit, what you're trying to do you need a Singapore holdco and a Vietnam opco? Do you need to do it as a locally owned to get certain licenses and then flick it into a Singco? This is the situation that you've got to deal with, and how you're going to do your licensing. What do you need? How far you're going to push the envelope within the grey area before you deal with licensing, and understand that. Get that platform, that business platform, ready as a foundation. You don't necessarily have to execute it. You can focus on your coding, you can focus on your market and your teachers and your delivery or your platform, but you need to have that foundation. When an investor comes in, that's what creates as much value as the actual content and delivery that you're doing with your students. And we do see quite a few transactions for those who have done that right, where people want to consolidate regional businesses, and Vietnam's very attractive and it has barriers to entry. And so the Vietnam part can have high value if you've done that structure right, so that that consolidation, being part of a global regional network, becomes feasible for those entrepreneur businesses. So that would be my sort of comments here, is that focus on that. Don't ignore it. Don't stop doing what you want to do with it, with education and tech, the actual content, but do not by any means at early stage go, oh, I'll think about it later. Think about it at the start, the structural side of what your business will be and what it will need.
Thanks, Matthew. So now coming back to Michael, Treman, and Trang, looking more towards the content side, towards the practicalities of the concept of the product in EdTech that someone would like to launch, what advice would you give from your experience working within your niche, your specific EdTech sector? What advice would you give to someone that would like to access the market here? And again, it's not about, you know, investment product profitability and things like that. It's more about your advice on creating value, on really impacting those communities that are important from that perspective. What would be your advice for someone that will look into this? Maybe Chaman, starting with you.
I think I would say understand the industry, understand what people need to learn, being very, very close to the industry. You can't be just launching an EdTech because it's a new thing to do. It's really much, why are you trying to do? What's the gap you're seeing in the industry? Why you are doing this and how do you support it? And being really, really close. So that's why we won't launch a program just for the sake of launching a program. We're launching a program because we see that there's a big need for people to understand and learn about it. And we encourage people. And then after that, how do you measure success? And for us, is the success of our alumni. If they're doing really well and they're starting to transform themselves, that is the key for us. So I would say to anyone that wants to get into that is that understand and do your homework, understand why are you setting up, understand the industry, being very close to them.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I'll approach it from more of kind of like I guess the business side of it is the barriers to entry for Vietnam in terms of monetization are very specific to Vietnam. So when you set up the business, make sure you know how you're going to monetize, and make sure you know, make sure you have a direction whether you want to go regional or global, because that's going to impact how you set up your team structure and your monetization channels as well.
And Matthew, I'm sure, knows all about that, in the sense that where investors have a regional mindset, it's already a completely different type of structuring and modeling for the market entry process than just saying it's a Vietnamese venture and we're going to cater to the Vietnamese community. Having that mindset from the beginning allows you to ease your way into the expansion and don't get any roadblocks ahead if you have a 5 to 10 year view.
Absolutely. So you're seeing sort of a lot of the entrants into that sector are foreign involved, not necessarily purely foreign businesses, but foreign involved with that regional view, with that longer term money making structure, monetizing that business element. And I think that's forced EdTech, and it's really pushing it together. And as Michael had mentioned, it's a key part. But I have to come back to sort of almost contradict what I was saying before, is compliment is that if the content, if the delivery, if the platform doesn't have a niche, doesn't have a market, that structure doesn't make sense. It's complementary. They go hand in hand, and you have to get that right. Michael mentioned again that there are specific barriers for Vietnam. If you can deal with them and overcome them, it's a great attractive market. If you ignore them, stick your head in the sand and think, Vietnam is easy, no one will care, you'll be burnt. I'll give one example. If you're applying for an e-commerce license with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, or DOIT in the district level, at a provincial level and at ministerial level, what the first thing to do is check your website. And if you've already been trading, penalties straight away. If you've been trading and operating that site before you've applied for an e-commerce license, you're already in trouble with the authorities. And it's those simple tricks like that that can catch you out in the bigger picture. So it's very specific. You can do well, but it's got to be balanced, and you've got to have the big picture in mind. You can't just push forward on one part of it. And we're seeing the regional involvement, or foreign involvement is very hot at the moment because of those opportunities in Vietnam.
And now coming back to the communities, to the content, Chang, any thoughts from your side on community support and your advice maybe on how other organizations can take advantage of the EdTech market and provide more value for communities here in Vietnam as you do?
Well, I think the part is also the same. Though we support the community, but we also need to understand the community, what the community needs. We cannot provide something that they don't need. Yeah. And so that's why with the EdTech and the values that the EdTech can bring for the community, I also think that sometimes working with stakeholder, we need to be patient, especially when you work in education in Vietnam. You should be very patient, but also can be very flexible. Because I think if you have a good product in EdTech or for the education, just be flexible. And I think that is a part of the revolution that we can see that with the current education system, it's quite fixed and it's very strict in all the steps. But with the EdTech, you can be very flexible. You can adapt with different solutions. You can bring with different products as long as the user attracted with your product. So somehow that's why be patient and be flexible together. It can be bring not just only for the market, but also for the community we serving with. It's also the same. We apply the same formula. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Cheng, for your last thoughts. I see there's no other questions from the community, so I'll launch one last invitation for any last questions from our attendees. I would like to thank all of you for your really insightful and practical insights, Michael, Cheng, and Chaman, and Matthew as well. It's a really interesting sector. I think now we're kind of starting, at least us that don't have that specific experience as you, we're starting to understand that the potential and the growth of the sector go hand in hand with community building, with creating networks, with collaboration between various types of stakeholders, and we can reach governments, we can reach regulatory parties, and we can reach underprivileged students as well. So I think the EdTech sector has that potential to really push innovation, enable users to understand how they can use innovation and other tools to become better in the end, to learn more and to develop more. So thank you again for participating at this EdTech in Vietnam webinar. This will be recorded, as I said, will be sent out to everyone that attended. And I invite as well the panelists to share with me any materials or any other content that you may have that you would like to share with our attendees. And they will all get an email with your insights. So again, thank you very much. It was a really insightful discussion, and I hope to do this again, maybe next year in a different format, maybe face-to-face in Vietnam. Let's keep in touch, and let's try to provide value for the community and the sector.
Thank you very much, Vlad. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.